In the glittering circles of the wealthy elite, words carry enormous weight. A single careless phrase can open doors, or destroy reputations. For Claire Morgan, a young waitress fighting to stay afloat in a demanding city, one sentence spoken in a language she wasn't meant to understand would completely rewrite her destiny. Before we continue, tell us which city you're from. It's important for us to know how far our stories reach. When Victor Reinhardt, a cold and calculating billionaire, insulted her in his native German, he assumed she was just another faceless servant, someone too ordinary to notice, too unimportant to matter. What he didn't know was that this quiet, self-contained woman understood every word he said. And the reply she gave, calm yet razor-sharp, would cut straight through his arrogance, turning what should have been an ordinary evening into the beginning of a silent war of minds. This is the story of how a single moment, a perfect retort in a foreign tongue, transformed a life and brought two worlds colliding in the most unexpected way. The Golden Ember, one of the most prestigious restaurants in downtown Chicago, had a rhythm of its own. The soft chime of silverware, the subdued murmurs of conversation, and the smooth motion of the staff all blended into an elegant symphony of luxury. It was a place where every glass sparkled and every smile was rehearsed. For Claire Morgan, that world was both a safe haven and a beautiful prison. At 25, she moved through the dining room with a poise that came from experience and exhaustion. Her crisp white uniform was more than clothing, it was armor. Her pleasant smile, perfected after years of practice, was her shield against the indifference of those she served. She performed her role so well that most guests never looked beyond the surface. But Claire's life was not confined to the gleaming floors of the Golden Ember. In a small apartment in the River North District, surrounded by shelves crammed with books, she lived another existence. Away from the hum of crystal glasses and whispered orders, she was a linguistics student in her final year at Hamilton University. Her life was a puzzle of scholarships, student loans, and long, grueling 9-hour shifts that kept her barely ahead of the bills. Language was her true passion, the patterns, the subtleties, the ways cultures connected and misunderstood each other. She loved discovering how meaning changed with tone or context, how a single word could carry entirely different emotions across borders. She could follow the formal elegance of Mandarin debates, feel the lyrical pulse of Farsi, and even dream in the soft rhythms of Italian. To her, the Golden Ember was more than a workplace, it was a living laboratory filled with people from every corner of the world. But it was also a constant reminder of how far her reality was from her dreams. Her daily world was full of familiar faces, some kind, some cruel. The manager, Mr. Cole, was a man whose ambition had hardened into tension long ago. He paced the floor like a general waiting for a battle to start, his sharp eyes catching every tiny imperfection, a fork out of line, a napkin folded unevenly. The staff feared him almost as much as they resented him. For him, charm toward a wealthy guest mattered far more than the well-being of his employees. Among the servers, there was one who seemed to thrive on making others miserable, Lauren Price. Tall, sharp-featured, and perpetually alert, she had worked at the Golden Ember for 5 years and guarded her position like a crown she refused to share. Every new hire was competition, but Claire, with her quiet efficiency and intelligence, was an especially unwelcome presence. Lauren's words always carried a hidden barb, and her smiles never reached her eyes. She would accidentally swap table assignments, forget to deliver a message, or whisper half-truths that might get someone else blamed. She didn't want to see Claire fail, she needed to see it. Claire endured it all with a calm that seemed to infuriate Lauren even more. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Yet even her patience would be tested on that Tuesday evening, a night that began like any other but would soon turn into something unforgettable. Earlier that afternoon, an unusual tension buzzed through the restaurant. A new reservation had appeared on the schedule under a name that made even the senior staff uneasy, Victor Reinhardt. Claire had overheard Mr. Cole speaking on the phone, his tone noticeably higher than usual. Yes, Mr. Reinhardt's assistant, of course, table 8 by the window. Absolutely. We'll have our top staff attend to him. Everyone in the industry knew who Victor Reinhardt was. The founder and CEO of Reinhardt Global, he was a man celebrated for his genius and feared for his ruthlessness. Business magazines described him as a modern predator, a man who built empires not by cooperation, but by conquest. He was the kind of leader who dismantled competitors piece by piece, smiling while doing it. As the dinner rush approached, Mr. Cole called a quick meeting in the kitchen. The air was thick with the aroma of truffle oil and garlic, and the clatter of dishes paused as his sharp voice cut through the noise. "Listen up," he barked. "Victor Reinhardt is dining with us at 8 o'clock sharp. This isn't just another guest, this is a test. I want perfection. No mistakes, no excuses. He's one of the most powerful clients we've ever had. One wrong move, and it reflects on all of us." His eyes swept over the room before settling on Claire. "Morgan, you'll be handling table 8. A wave of whispers moved through the staff. Lauren's lips curled into a faint smirk, half pity, half triumph. Serving Reinhardt was an honor, but also a trap. It could make or break a career. "Sir, are you sure?" Claire asked evenly. "Lauren has more experience with demanding guests." Mr. Cole's expression didn't soften. "I'm sure, Morgan. You're one of our best. Don't let me down." Lauren turned away, polishing a glass that was already spotless, pretending not to listen. Claire felt the familiar pressure building in her chest. This wasn't just about doing her job. It was about proving herself again, to earn the tips that paid for textbooks, to keep her head above water, and to survive another night in a place that never truly saw her. She smoothed her apron, inhaled slowly, and straightened her posture. The steady ticking of the kitchen clock filled the silence. By 8 o'clock, the restaurant had shifted into a hush. The arrival of Victor Reinhardt wasn't merely an entrance, it was a takeover. The moment he stepped inside the Golden Ember, the atmosphere changed. Conversations quieted, and even the clinking of silverware seemed to fade. He was tall, well-built, and carried himself with an effortless authority that demanded attention. His silver hair gleamed under the warm light, neatly combed back from a high forehead. His charcoal gray suit was tailored so sharply it looked as though it could slice through glass. But it was his eyes that caught everyone, the pale, icy blue of someone used to being obeyed without question. 2 younger men followed closely behind, their expensive suits betraying a nervous energy. They smiled too quickly, nodded too often, each move betraying the fear of disappointing the man they shadowed. They were his executives, orbiting him like anxious satellites. Mr. Cole appeared at the entrance with an almost theatrical grin. "Mr. Reinhardt, welcome to the Golden Ember. It's an honor to have you with us tonight." Reinhardt gave a short nod, his expression unreadable. "My table," he said, his deep, accented voice low and commanding. It wasn't a request, it was an order. "Of course, right this way," Mr. Cole said quickly, nearly bowing as he led the trio to the best table in the house. From across the room, Claire watched with quiet focus. Her heart pounded steadily, not from fear but from awareness. She had served wealthy guests before, politicians, tech moguls, actors, but none of them had that kind of commanding presence. There was something about Reinhardt that made the air feel heavier, colder. As he reached the table, Mr. Cole gestured toward her. "This is Claire, Mr. Reinhardt. She'll be your server tonight. One of our very best." Claire approached with poise, menus in hand. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Golden Ember," she said with a professional warmth. Reinhardt's eyes met hers, sharp, evaluating, and dismissive all at once. He took the menu from her hand without a word, his touch cool and impersonal. His 2 associates avoided her gaze completely, pretending to study the wine list. The interaction lasted only seconds, yet it set the tone for everything that would follow. Victor Reinhardt wasn't merely a demanding customer, he was a man who tested everyone around him, pushing limits just to see who would bend first. And tonight, his target was Claire Morgan. He started testing her by dissecting the wine list as though it were an interrogation. "This Chateau Margaux," he said, tapping the label of an outrageously expensive bottle, the 05. "Do you recall the exact rainfall in Bordeaux that summer?" Claire didn't even blink. "It was a particularly dry season, sir," she said evenly, which reduced the yield but made the grapes far more concentrated. "It's considered one of the best vintages of that decade." For a moment a flicker of surprise, or maybe irritation, crossed Victor Reinhardt's face before he covered it with a dismissive grunt. He gave a curt nod and ordered the wine. When Claire returned to present it, he studied her every motion like a hawk. His pale eyes followed the way she turned the bottle, the ease with which she pulled the cork, and the quiet confidence in her posture. When she offered him the glass to taste, he waved it away. Just pour it. Dinner became a sequence of deliberate provocations. He sent back his appetizer, claiming the seared scallops were overcooked by a degree. He complained that the lighting was dull, the background music insufferable. Every remark came in a low, cutting tone, meant not only to humiliate her but to keep his nervous subordinates in check. They nodded and murmured agreement, eager to prove their loyalty. It was a performance, and Claire was the unwilling actress caught in the spotlight of his control. Still, she remained calm, her composure unbroken. She apologized smoothly, replaced his dish, and asked Mr. Cole to adjust the lights, all while keeping that steady, professional smile that hid the tension rising in her chest. She felt as if she were walking a tightrope over an abyss, with Mr. Cole watching from one side and Reinhardt from the other, both waiting for her to slip. And somewhere across the room, Lauren Price was the vulture circling overhead, watching the scene unfold with open satisfaction. The main courses had just been served when Reinhardt launched into a monologue about a recent corporate acquisition, his voice slicing through the restaurant's polished calm. Claire approached the table quietly, a silver pitcher of iced water balanced in her hand. She had done this task thousands of times, graceful, precise, invisible. But just as she reached his side, one of the executives gestured too broadly while trying to agree with his boss. His elbow brushed the table's edge. The movement was small, barely noticeable, yet it was enough. A single droplet of water slipped from the pitcher's spout, arcing through the air and landing on Victor Reinhardt's flawless gray sleeve. Time froze. Reinhardt's hand, mid-motion, stopped. His fork hovered for a beat before lowering to the table. The two executives went pale. Mr. Cole, watching from across the dining room, looked as if he'd just witnessed a disaster. Claire's heart plummeted. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," she said quickly, reaching for a napkin. But Reinhardt didn't look at her. He raised a hand, slow, deliberate, commanding silence. His eyes fixed on the dark spot on his jacket as if it were a mortal insult. Then he sighed, a deep, theatrical sound of disgust, and turned to his companions. Believing she couldn't understand, he switched to German. The words were low and venomous. In English, they meant, "Look at this clumsy girl. They hire these pretty, empty-headed children and call it service. She probably has the brains of a garden gnome. She's good for nothing but decoration. Utterly incompetent." His executives forced out nervous laughter. In their world, the boss was always right, always amusing, even when cruel. They glanced at Claire with a smug pity, secure in the assumption that their insult was safe behind a foreign tongue. But it wasn't. Every word struck her with full force, not on deaf ears but in the mind of someone who understood the language perfectly. She absorbed the nuance, the syntax, and the cruelty beneath it all. Her professional mask cracked, not with an outburst, but with silence. The German syllables hung in the air like invisible poison. To the nearby diners, it was nothing more than the murmur of a powerful man irritated over dinner. To Claire, it was an attack, sharp and personal. The insult wasn't about the spilled water, it was about who she was, her intelligence, her worth, her existence. Pretty, empty-headed child. Intelligence of a garden gnome. Utterly incompetent. Each phrase felt like a bullet fired with precision, meant to strip away her dignity under the false belief that she wouldn't understand. She stood still, the pitcher in her hand, her expression perfectly neutral while inside her pulse thundered. It was the same old sting, the pain of being underestimated, of having her intellect dismissed just because she wore an apron and a polite smile. It was the weight of every condescending remark she'd endured, every sneer from Lauren, every arrogant customer who treated her like furniture. Reinhardt seemed to savor the moment, basking in the quiet dominance of his cruelty. He believed he had re-established control, reminding his subordinates and this insignificant waitress of their place. But when his cold eyes returned to her, expecting shame or tears, what he found instead was defiance. Her spine straightened, her chin lifted slightly, and the practiced smile faded from her lips. What replaced it was calm, icy, deliberate, unshakable. Claire set the pitcher gently on the service stand beside the table, her movements unhurried. Then she looked at him. The eyes he had dismissed as decorative were now bright and sharp, filled with an intelligence that cut deeper than words. The atmosphere changed instantly. The executives sensed it, their laughter died mid-breath. Something in the air had shifted. From across the room, Mr. Cole froze, realizing disaster was seconds away. He started toward the table, panic on his face, ready to apologize, to promise the suit would be dry cleaned, even to fire Claire if it would calm the situation. But he was too late. The silence between them stretched, heavy and electric. Then Claire spoke. Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried through the restaurant like a clear bell. She addressed Victor Reinhardt, and she didn't speak in English. Her German was flawless, formal, academic, the kind learned in the lecture halls of the Baden Institute of Linguistics, not on the streets of Berlin. In English, her words meant, "Sir, your assumption that my position here reflects a lack of intelligence is as flawed as your understanding of dative case grammar." The proper phrasing would have been quite different. But perhaps it's unreasonable to expect linguistic precision from a man whose character is itself incompetent. She said it evenly, almost kindly, without anger or hysteria. Her tone was calm, factual, and devastating. Not only had she understood his insult, she had corrected it, dismantling his authority with the same word he had used against her. The effect was instant. Victor Reinhardt's face, once carved in arrogance, seemed to collapse. His mouth parted slightly, the color draining from his skin until it turned pale and waxen. His icy blue eyes widened, not in fury, but in disbelief. For the first time, the man who dominated every room he entered found himself speechless. It was the look of a chess master who had just been defeated by a pawn. The two young executives stared in disbelief, their jaws slack as they looked from Claire to their boss and back again, struggling to process the impossible. This waitress, this quiet American girl, had just dismantled one of Europe's most feared and respected men, and she had done it in his own language. Across the room, Lauren Price froze in mid-motion, the wineglass in her hand suspended in the air. Even Mr. Cole, who had been striding toward the table with determined urgency, stopped abruptly just a few steps away. He didn't understand a single word of German, but he didn't need to. The message was universal: a powerful man had been rendered speechless by someone he thought beneath him. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. The clinking of silverware stopped, the soft hum of conversation faded. For a long, suspended moment, the heart of the golden ember belonged entirely to Claire Morgan, a young waitress in a crisp white uniform who now held the attention of the entire room and the shattered ego of a billionaire in the palm of her hand. Victor Reinhardt, a man accustomed to controlling boardrooms and deciding the fates of entire corporations, sat frozen. His face, usually a mask of command, had turned blank with disbelief. The linguistic trap had snapped shut, and he found himself caught inside it. His authority, built on fear and the assumption that everyone around him was intellectually inferior, had just been obliterated by a 25-year-old waitress holding a water pitcher. His first instinct was fury. A flush crept up his neck, his jaw tightening as rage began to rise behind his eyes. How dare she? How dare anyone speak to him like that? But just as quickly as the anger came, it was overtaken by something far more powerful: humiliation. His cruelty, so casually delivered in what he thought was a private code, had been exposed for everyone to see. His arrogance had turned into his own downfall, witnessed by the people who feared him most. He had tried to play the predator, only to discover his prey had sharper teeth. The two young executives sat frozen in place, their earlier smirks gone. Panic flickered in their eyes as they realized what had happened, and what it meant for them. They had laughed at his insult, joining in his mockery, and now they were part of his humiliation. They glanced at Claire as though she were some mythical creature, something dangerous, unpredictable, and untouchable. One of them, the younger man named Aaron, swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. The air between them all was thick, tense, almost suffocating, until Mr. Cole broke the spell. He hurried forward, his face slick with sweat, his voice tripping over itself. "Mr. Reinhardt, I'm so terribly sorry. I don't know what she said, but I assure you this is not the standard of the Golden Ember. Completely unacceptable. Miss Morgan, you're quiet." The word cracked through the air like a whip. Reinhardt had spoken in English this time, his tone low and sharp. The sound silenced Mr. Cole instantly. The billionaire's eyes never left Claire's face. The shock had begun to fade, replaced by a dangerous curiosity. This wasn't supposed to happen. His world didn't allow surprises. Yet here she was, a waitress who had not only defied him but outsmarted him. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but intense, and asked in German who she was. Claire met his gaze without flinching. Her answer, in the same flawless German, was simple. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm your server. The words landed like another blow. She wasn't gloating or dramatic. She was simply stating a fact, refusing to let him define her while also not denying her role. That's not what I asked, he said, his voice taut, his pride trying to reassemble itself. Where did you learn to speak my language like that? Not just speak it, understand it? He was testing her again, probing for weakness, expecting a shallow answer, a few college classes, a family connection. But Claire took a calm breath before she replied. I spent a year on a full academic scholarship at the Baden Institute of Linguistics, she said evenly. I studied comparative linguistics and Germanic philology. My thesis explored the sociolinguistic impact of dialect variations in post-unification Germany. Her answer landed with precision. It wasn't just a defense, it was a declaration. In his world of intellect and achievement, these were credentials that mattered. Reinhardt leaned back slightly, as though the words had physically struck him. Baden, he muttered, almost to himself. He knew it well. It was Germany's most respected university, the birthplace of countless scholars and thinkers. He had just insulted a Baden scholar, calling her empty-headed. The irony was almost suffocating. One of his executives, Daniel, desperate to defuse the tension, spoke timidly in German. Sir, maybe we should, the food is getting cold. Reinhardt turned his gaze on him, icy and cutting. Be silent, Daniel. You laughed, remember? You're as much a fool as I am. Daniel's face turned bright red as he looked down at his plate. Victor's attention returned to Claire. The game had changed. The spilled drop of water was no longer the issue. This was now a battle of intellect and pride, and he had lost the first round. For the first time in many years, Victor Reinhardt was intrigued. The woman standing before him possessed intelligence, composure, and courage, a combination so rare it almost unsettled him. She hadn't simply defended herself, she had countered him with surgical precision. Those qualities were not only rare, they were valuable. He studied her carefully now, truly seeing her for the first time. Beyond the uniform, beyond the surface, there was a sharp mind and a quiet strength. In his world, assets were meant to be acquired. Mr. Cole, still clueless about what had been said but sensing danger, stepped forward again. Morgan, my office. Now, he hissed, grabbing her arm. Claire winced slightly at the force of his grip, but before she could speak, Reinhardt's voice cut through the air again, firm and commanding. Take your hand off her. Cole froze, his hand dropping as though it had touched fire. She's not going anywhere, Reinhardt said, his gaze unwavering. In fact, I believe Miss Morgan and I have more to discuss. He gestured to the empty chair beside him. Please, he said, the word sounding foreign, forced, sit down. The room seemed to stop breathing. A billionaire inviting a waitress to join him at his table defied every rule of the social order. Claire stood there, caught between her furious manager and the man who had just humiliated and, in a strange way, respected her. For a few endless seconds, no one moved. The invitation hung in the air, absurd and shocking. Claire's mind raced. Was this another test? A trap meant to embarrass her even further? Mr. Reinhardt, Mr. Cole stammered, this is highly irregular. She's on duty. Staff aren't permitted to. She's on duty for me, Reinhardt interrupted without even looking at him. I'm conducting a private business meeting. I trust my privacy will be respected. He turned his gaze to his two executives. Daniel. Aaron. Go to the bar and study the dessert menu. Take your time. Grateful for an excuse to escape, both men scrambled to their feet and retreated toward the bar, leaving the two of them in a heavy, charged silence. Miss Morgan, Reinhardt said quietly, gesturing again to the chair. Every instinct in her told her to decline, to walk away, to preserve what was left of her professional boundaries. But another part of her, the same spark that had made her stand up to him, refused to back down. He had started this. She would finish it. With a calm grace that hid the storm inside her, Claire pulled out the chair and sat, her back straight and her expression composed. Across the restaurant, Lauren watched the scene unfold, her mouth open in disbelief. This was not how it was supposed to go. Claire was supposed to be humiliated, fired, defeated. Instead, she was sitting face to face with Victor Reinhardt, the man who had just learned that even the most powerful can be challenged by those they underestimate. For a few long moments, Reinhardt simply studied Claire. His expression was unreadable, his eyes narrow with something that looked more like fascination than anger. Finally, he spoke in his perfectly measured English. "You are not what you seem, Miss Morgan." "Most people aren't, Mr. Reinhardt," she replied calmly. He gave a faint smirk, a trace of amusement that didn't reach his eyes. "Touché," he said softly. "Your German isn't just fluent. It's academic. Why are you working here, serving overpriced meals to people like me?" It was a question she had asked herself countless times. But tonight, she answered with simple honesty. Because the Baden scholarships don't cover Chicago rent or Hamilton University's tuition. This is an honest job that pays the bills. There was quiet dignity in her words, a subtle reminder that integrity itself could be a form of power. "Honor doesn't pay for opportunity," Reinhardt countered, waving one hand dismissively. "Intellect does. Courage does. And you've demonstrated both. Those are qualities I understand, and invest in." Claire said nothing. She just waited, her gaze steady. "My company, Reinhardt Global, is finalizing a major acquisition of an American tech firm based in San Francisco," he continued. "It's a complicated deal. The cultural and linguistic barriers are enormous. My American team is competent but lacks nuance. They hear the words but miss the meaning beneath them. The German team, on the other hand, sees everything as black and white." He leaned in slightly, his intensity filling the space between them. "I need a bridge. Not just a translator who swaps one language for another, I have plenty of those. I need someone who understands both cultures. Someone who can read the silence in a negotiation, who can tell me when a yes means no, and when a smile hides a refusal." He paused. "I need an interpreter of culture, not just language." The air between them grew heavy with implication. Claire's pulse quickened. She could see where he was going with this, but it still felt unreal. "I'm offering you a position at Reinhardt Global," he said finally, the words falling with the weight of command. "You'll work directly with my executive team as a cultural consultant for this merger. The position is based here in Chicago for the first 5 months, then moves to San Francisco. The annual salary will be $150,000, plus a signing bonus." Claire felt the air leave her lungs. $150,000. The number was staggering, so far removed from her world of tips and student loans that it hardly felt real. It wasn't just money. It was a life-changing sum, a door into another existence. Freedom, offered by the same man who had humiliated her 20 minutes earlier. Her thoughts tangled into disbelief. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" Reinhardt's answer was simple. "Because you're not afraid of me," he said, as if stating an irrefutable fact. "Everyone at my company fears me. They tell me what I want to hear. You, Miss Morgan, told me the truth even when it was dangerous. That is a rare and valuable thing. In my world, it's worth more than a dozen MBAs from Harvard. So, what do you say?" Claire looked at him, at the imposing man across from her, at the elegant dining room that had felt like her cage only hours ago. Her mind was a storm. Could she really work for this man? For someone so arrogant, so cruel? Could she accept a future born out of humiliation? "I need to think about it," she said, her voice regaining steadiness. Reinhardt nodded slowly. There was no disappointment in his eyes, only something resembling respect. He had expected immediate gratitude, her hesitation intrigued him instead. "Very well," he said. "Be at my Chicago office the day after tomorrow at 9. Here's the address." He slid a heavy, embossed business card across the table. "We'll discuss the details. Don't be late." With that, he stood, placed several crisp $100 bills on the table, far more than enough to cover the meal, and walked out of the Golden Ember without another glance. Claire sat in stunned silence, the card hot and heavy in her hand. The entire restaurant stared at her. Mr. Cole looked ready to faint, but it was Lauren Price's glare that cut the sharpest. When Claire finally moved toward the staff area, Lauren intercepted her by the kitchen doors. "So?" Lauren hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "What was that all about? Did you offer him something that wasn't on the menu?" The insinuation was filthy, but Claire was too drained to react. "It was a misunderstanding, Lauren." A misunderstanding that gets you a private meeting and a business card? Lauren's tone was mocking, her eyes narrowing into slits. I don't know what you did, but I won't let some college girl walk in here and get special treatment. I've worked here for 5 years. I've earned my place. For the next 2 hours, Lauren made good on her threat. A tray of drinks Claire carried was accidentally bumped from behind, spilling across the floor. A food order vanished, leaving an angry customer and a scolding from Mr. Cole. The whispers spread quickly, Lauren fanning them like sparks into flame, rumors that Claire had flirted her way into a billionaire's favor. By the end of the shift, Claire knew the truth. Even if she refused Victor's offer, her days at the Golden Ember were numbered. Lauren would make sure of it. The world that had once been both her cage and her sanctuary was collapsing around her. The decision ahead wasn't just about taking a job, it was about escaping a place that had become unbearable. The path forward was frightening, but the path back was gone. The walk home through downtown Chicago felt like moving through a dream. The noise of the city, the blaring horns, the late-night chatter, the smell of street food, blurred into the background of her spinning thoughts. In her pocket, Victor Reinhardt's business card felt like more than paper. It was an artifact, heavy with meaning. The sleek design, his name printed in minimalist black font, Victor Reinhardt, CEO, Reinhardt Global, mocked the small, chaotic reality of her life. Her apartment in the River North District was tiny but filled with warmth. Books on linguistics, history, and poetry covered every surface. It was her refuge, paid for with aching feet and forced smiles. But tonight, it felt small and suffocating. She dropped onto her worn-out sofa, the springs groaning beneath her, and stared at the card. $150,000. The figure echoed in her mind like a distant melody. It was enough to erase her student debt, to pay for textbooks without sacrifice, to finally help her mother, a retired schoolteacher living modestly in Vermont. It meant stepping out of the shadows of service and into the world she had studied from afar, a world that now felt terrifyingly close. But the price of that golden opportunity was allegiance to Victor Reinhardt. She replayed the dinner in her head, the words that had burned into her memory. Clumsy. Empty-headed. Incompetent. He hadn't just insulted her, he had enjoyed it. He had used his power like a weapon, turning her into the evening's entertainment. Could she really work for a man like that? Sit beside him in meetings, translate for him, help him succeed, knowing their first connection was built on cruelty? Taking that offer felt like betrayal. Like selling a small, vital part of her soul. Claire's phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. It was a message from her mother. Just checking in, sweetheart. Hope your shift went well. Love you. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Her mother had sacrificed so much for her, working 2 jobs for years to make sure her daughter got the education she'd dreamed of. It was her mother who had first sparked her fascination with language, buying used German and French storybooks from thrift stores when Claire was a little girl. This offer from Victor wasn't just about Claire's own ambitions, it was a chance to repay a lifetime of love and sacrifice. But that thought only deepened the conflict tearing at her. One path offered honesty and peace of conscience, but also more struggle. The other promised success beyond imagination, at a cost she wasn't sure she could bear. Another message appeared. It was from Ethan, the kind busboy who had always looked out for her. Hey, you okay? Lauren's telling everyone you gave that guy your number. Mr. Cole's furious. Watch your back. Claire's stomach dropped. Lauren wasn't just gossiping anymore, she was building a story, twisting reality into something ugly that would stain Claire's reputation long after she left. It was confirmation of what she already knew. No matter what she decided, her time at the Golden Ember was over. She couldn't stay there now. The illusion of safety was gone. She walked to her small desk, brushing aside a pile of papers on linguistic theory, and opened her laptop. For hours, she researched Victor Reinhardt and Reinhardt Global. She read financial articles, company reports, and editorial pieces that painted him in extremes. Some called him a visionary, others, a monster. A brilliant mind with ruthless instincts. His company was notorious for its aggressive takeovers, yet also praised for groundbreaking innovations in sustainable engineering. He was known to fire employees without hesitation, but he also donated millions to education and the arts. He wasn't a simple villain. He was a contradiction, a man capable of creation and destruction in equal measure. And now, he was offering her a seat at his table. Claire leaned back in her chair. Linguistics, she realized, had never been just about grammar or words. It was about meaning, how tone, context, and power shaped communication. The job Victor offered wasn't just employment. It was a chance to put her knowledge into practice, to walk the line between languages, cultures, and egos. It was the ultimate test of everything she'd studied. A spark of defiance lit inside her, pushing through the confusion. Why should she be the one to retreat? He had insulted her once, dismissed her intelligence. Maybe the best response wasn't to run, but to step into his world and prove him wrong every single day. She wouldn't just be his translator. She would be his reminder, his equal, not his subordinate. She would command respect not because he granted it, but because she earned it. By the time dawn began to color the Chicago skyline, her decision was made. She would go to that meeting. She would take the job, but on her own terms. She would set boundaries and refuse to become another frightened employee. She was Claire Morgan, linguist and consultant. Her value wasn't something he was giving her. It was something she brought to the table herself. She spent the next hour drafting her resignation to Mr. Cole. The message was brief and professional, effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity. She made no mention of Victor Reinhardt. Let them speculate, she was already gone. As the morning light spread through her apartment, Claire showered and dressed carefully. She didn't own corporate clothes, but she had a simple black dress, a fitted blazer she'd found in a thrift shop, and a pair of sensible low heels. Pulling her hair back into a neat bun, she looked at her reflection. Gone was the tired waitress. Staring back at her was a woman standing at the edge of something new, terrified, but ready. She picked up the business card from her desk and slipped it into her purse. Then, without another glance around the apartment, she stepped into the morning air. The headquarters of Reinhardt Global were a gleaming tower of glass and steel rising over downtown Chicago. It pierced the skyline like a symbol of ambition, or arrogance, or both. Inside, the lobby was vast and immaculate, all black marble floors and pale walls, decorated with abstract art that probably cost more than her entire education. The air smelled faintly of polish, coffee, and money. People in tailored suits moved with brisk precision, their expressions fixed and unreadable. It was a different universe from the noisy, warm chaos of the Golden Ember. Claire approached the reception desk, her heels tapping lightly on the marble. Claire Morgan for Mr. Reinhardt. I have a 9 o'clock appointment. The receptionist, a poised woman with a sharp bob haircut, blinked in mild surprise. Claire didn't look like the usual bankers or executives who passed through. But one glance at her computer screen confirmed the appointment. The woman's surprise softened into respect. Of course, Miss Morgan. Mr. Reinhardt is expecting you. Please take the express elevator to the 62nd floor. His assistant will meet you there. The elevator rose swiftly, the city shrinking below her. For a brief moment, her confidence wavered. What was she doing here? She was a linguist, not a corporate strategist, after all. She was walking into the lion's den armed only with her education and her sense of self-worth. But then she remembered, she wasn't there to beg for a job. She was there to negotiate her place. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a quiet, minimalist office space with a panoramic view of Millennium Park. A stern-looking woman with a headset greeted her without a smile and led her through a pair of tall oak doors. Mr. Reinhardt will be with you shortly. The office was enormous. 3 of the walls were made entirely of glass, giving the illusion that she was floating high above the city. The 4th wall was covered in books, volumes of philosophy, business, and classic literature in English, German, and French. A massive desk dominated the center of the room like an altar to power. Victor Reinhardt wasn't there. It was a classic power move, to make her wait, to remind her who controlled the space. But instead of feeling intimidated, Claire felt curious. She walked along the bookshelf, trailing her fingers over the spines. Schiller, Goethe, Kant, alongside Twain, Faulkner, and Whitman. The man was well-read, which both impressed and unsettled her. His cruelty wasn't born of ignorance, it came from intellect sharpened into a weapon. I see you found my collection, came a voice from behind her. She turned. Reinhardt had entered silently. Today, he wasn't wearing his usual suit but a dark cashmere sweater and tailored trousers, a calculated attempt to appear approachable. Claire didn't buy it. A person's library can say a lot about them, she said evenly. He walked toward his desk. And what does mine say about me? That you value the architecture of great arguments, she replied. And that you understand the power of words. For the first time, a trace of a genuine smile crossed his face. Indeed, Victor said, that's exactly why I think we have something to discuss. He gestured toward a chair opposite his massive desk. Though the setup still placed her in a position of formality, it was far less rigid than the night before. Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt, Claire began, remaining on her feet. Before we talk about your offer, I have a few terms of my own. His eyebrows lifted slightly. This was not what he expected. You have terms? Yes, she replied evenly, her voice calm but unshakably firm. First, our professional relationship will be built on mutual respect. My position is that of an expert consultant. I will not run errands, and I will not tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully, in any language. My input and analyses must be taken seriously, not just acknowledged. She paused, allowing her words to settle. Reinhardt's expression didn't change, but the glint in his eyes suggested she had his full attention. Second, she continued, while I'll be fully committed to the success of this project, I'm still completing my master's degree at Hamilton University. I'll need some flexibility in my schedule to finish my coursework and thesis. My work for you won't suffer, but my education is non-negotiable. Her tone was polite yet immovable. And third, Claire said, her voice gaining quiet strength, I accept the salary you proposed, but I want the signing bonus redirected. Reinhardt Global has a philanthropic foundation. I want that amount used to create a scholarship fund for students of the humanities, specifically, linguistics, at Hamilton University. It could be called the Reinhardt Global Scholarship for Cultural Understanding. She had played her final card. It was bold, perhaps even reckless, but it was also brilliant. She had turned a simple financial gesture into something meaningful, forcing him to back his words with action. It was poetic justice, making him publicly honor the very field he had once mocked. For a full minute, Reinhardt said nothing. His fingers pressed together beneath his chin, eyes fixed on her in silent calculation. This wasn't the negotiation he'd expected. He had prepared for discussions about salary, benefits, maybe an office. He hadn't anticipated a declaration of terms that challenged his entire dynamic of power. He had tried to purchase an asset, and the asset was now rewriting the conditions of her own acquisition. Then, suddenly, he leaned back and let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't mocking, it was genuine, surprised amusement. Miss Morgan, he said, a slow smile spreading across his face, you're more dangerous than I thought. He extended his hand across the desk. Welcome to Reinhardt Global. You'll draft the scholarship proposal with our foundation's director this afternoon. Claire took his hand. His grip was steady and dry. In that moment, she realized this wasn't the end of her struggle, it was the beginning of an entirely new one. Working with Victor Reinhardt would mean constant battles of will, navigating his sharp intellect and unpredictable temperament. But as she glanced out the window, across the vast city of Chicago glittering beneath the morning light, she no longer felt like she was drowning. For the first time, she felt grounded, anchored. She had walked into the lion's den and emerged with the lion's respect. The timid waitress was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her worth, in every language she spoke. That single act of defiance, born from cruelty, had transformed her life. It didn't just change her job, it changed her destiny. Her story is a reminder that our true value is never defined by the clothes we wear or the titles we hold, but by the strength of our character and the depth of our mind. Victor Reinhardt thought he was putting a lowly waitress in her place. Instead, he found the one person who could look him in the eye and earn his respect. It proves that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most powerful truths. Strength isn't about shouting the loudest, it's about knowing when and how to speak your truth. If Claire's remarkable story moved you, give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss our next story of unexpected triumph.